The claim I'm responding to today is animal cruelty is extremely relevant. My claims against the advocate's argument are: the advocate never gave a concise definition of what constitutes animal cruelty, and the advocate did not present statistical evidence or eyewitness testimonies, but rather used he said, she said examples that would require further research. To support the claim that the advocate did not give a concise definition of what constitutes animal cruelty, I bring up the issue that the advocate equates tests performed on lab rats to that of 3 men torturing a rabbit to death. Obviously, one is less serious than the other, so the question must be asked, where do we draw the line? Without a clear, concise definition of what animal cruelty is, people can equate the most trivial action of swatting a fly to a horrendous torturous act. This is what happened during Obama's interview with CNBC correspondent John Harwood at the White House. Obama swatted a fly, and PETA was not happy, so they sent him a catch-a-bug humane bug catcher, a device that allows users to trap a housefly and then release it outside. PETA stated in their blog, The PETA Files, that their position was this: he isn't the Buddha, he isn't a human being. He's a human being, and human beings have a long way to go before they act. PETA is responsible for many noble actions in stopping blatant cases of animal abuse, but their actions chastising the President of the United States for swatting a fly causes them to lose their credibility. Without a clear, concise definition of animal cruelty, people can also make issues seem far worse than they actually are. CBS News released an article that read, during their Holocaust on Your Plate campaign, PETA contended that, like the Jews murdered in the concentration camps, animals are terrorized when they are housed in huge, filthy warehouses and rounded up for shipment to slaughter. The leather sofa and handbag are the moral equivalent of the lampshades made from the skins of people killed in the death camps. The author commented, "Thank you, PETA, for detestably belittling one of the most horrific human tragedies in modern history. I'm not going to deny that a cattle slaughterhouse isn't disgusting, but any reasonable person knows that equating the plight of a cow with coordinated extermination of millions of human beings is reprehensible." PETA claimed to apologize earlier this year for their Holocaust campaign, but really just justified their words. Though there may need to be a change in some of the policies of the meatpacking industry, people tend to focus on the few bad incidents rather than the good. Many forget that the Food Safety and Inspection Service, or the FSIS, is the agency within the USDA responsible for ensuring compliance with Humane Methods of Slaughter Act. FSIS employs a veterinarian and slaughter line inspectors at federally inspected slaughter establishments. The veterinarian enforces humane slaughter methods throughout the entire plant. The veterinarian and the slaughter inspectors observe the methods by which cattle, sheep, swine, goats, horses, mules, or other equines are slaughtered, They ensure that the plant takes corrective action where needed and are responsible for reporting instances of inhumane treatment of animals as they carry out their primary food safety-related inspections. These examples show that without this definition of animal abuse, petting an animal too hard could be considered hitting it, and that this action could also be later compared to domestic violence against a loved one. As stated before, the advocate did not present statistical information or eyewitness testimonies as well. The examples, though emotionally moving, would require further research due to their he said, she said nature. By stating that animal abuse is prevalent, the advocate is once again making a vague generalization. The advocate does not state where animal abuse occurs or by whom, making the point of their claim confusing. In a study searching for a correlation between animal abuse and domestic violence, a survey was taken of the largest shelter for women who are battered in 49 states and the District of Columbia. It was stated one of the questions was asked, do women come into your shelter and talk about instances of pet abuse? An affirmative response was given by 85% of the shelters. In response to the question, do children who come into your shelter talk about incidents of pet abuse? 63% of the 46 shelters that completed this item said yes. We also asked respondents, in your experience with shelters, have you observed the coexistence of domestic violence and pet abuse? 83% of the shelters responded affirmatively. Rather than simply stating animal abuse is prevalent and accusing each and every person of animal abuse, the speaker should have been specific on where animal abuse was more likely to be found to better inform the listener rather than making the generalization that animal abuse was everywhere. If one were to think in terms of domestic violence leading to animal abuse, since not every child is abused, and in the shelter survey, 63% of children who did talk about pet abuse, it would be ignorant to insinuate that a majority of pets suffer from abuse. Which is what is left to the thought when animal abuse is referred to as prevalent, and then an example of elementary school kids throwing rocks and bricks at a pit bull tied to a pole is given. Because of the generalizations, lack of statistical evidence, and lack of a clear, concise definition of animal cruelty, the claim should be reevaluated.
All right, the main claims labeled. It sounds like you've got a couple of general counterclaims that you're going to use to respond to the issue. There's a challenge to the analogies that are being used by the advocate. You're suggesting some equivocations taking place. There are a lot of value issues that are contained in this argument, and I think that you point that out without actually ever saying that they are value issues. You mostly try and confine them to definitional kinds of questions, and I thought that those were reasonable presses. You had one piece of factual data that talked about the rules and regulations that are available to control the slaughter of animals, and I thought that that was pretty solid. The advocate's generalization didn't have particular data on that point, so you've got a good counterclaim on that issue. You get a little caught up in this whole discussion with the study of the people in the shelters and pet abuse. I think the idea here is that the inference that the people in shelters are a good indication of what kind of abuse exists in the larger society is perhaps problematic. I ultimately think I understand the argument that you're making there, but I think you need to make that claim a little bit clearer. And there's just a lot of reading and not a lot of audience contact or connecting with us. All right, Brian, Honda.
I declare the fact that I will be